Many of us, especially here in this community, are interested in, tinker with, maybe invest in Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies. And there's an interesting story that is developing relating to how the IRS sees your investing in Bitcoin and some things that are going on there. Lawsuits recently been filed. So we have joining us on the phone this morning Dyanr from the New Civil Liberties Alliance to tell us all about it. Good morning, Audie.
Good morning, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So give us the 10,000-foot view. What's going on here?
So the main problem here in this lawsuit is that that IRS is claiming that it has the unbridled authority to demand and seize Americans' private financial information from third parties without any judicial process. And we are saying that authority that the IRS is claiming is in violation of the Fourth and Fifth Amendments and statutory protections.
Sure. So your client, rather, James Harper, he lives in New Hampshire, had done some trading with Coinbase, I think, and some other companies, but Coinbase in particular here. And by my reading here, the IRS just said to Coinbase, give us information about anybody who's done so-and-so. And that's clearly, at least by your defense, clearly a violation of some of our constitutional protections, right?
Right, and Mr. Harper, like many people who buy and sell Bitcoin, have been trading in Bitcoin since at least 2013, and he has diligently paid all of the applicable taxes, and he'll continue to do so. The problem occurred when the IRS in, I believe, August of 2019, sent out some 10,000 letters to all of these people who are buying and selling Bitcoin or holding Bitcoin wallets, assuming that they are guilty until proven innocent, and these letters are the basis for the lawsuit.
Yeah. So, why should this worry us? I mean, it just I just happen to know there are a lot of casual Bitcoin investors, traders, like here and around the area listening to the show. Why should this kind of I'll call it scrutiny at this point, for lack of a better term, but why should this kind of scrutiny by the IRS worry us?
I think this is worrisome because this can happen to anybody. And I don't think the IRS is, going just after people who own Bitcoin wallets. They're essentially claiming this authority to audit taxpayers without going through the proper procedures. I mean, they have several ways that they can obtain this information legally. I mean, they could issue a valid subpoena, they can obtain a court order, they can obtain a judicial warrant based on probable cause. But here and elsewhere, they are trying to circumvent the procedures in place that protect the people's private information and privacy rights. And that is what's worrisome about this.
Yeah, so on one hand, I guess a good analogy for this would be like you're driving down the street, the police officer pulls you over and starts going through the car looking for something that you might have done wrong. Am I right with that?
Right, and in those circumstances, for example, it's a consent search kind of a situation where, police officer typically asks you, may I search your car? You could say no at that point, at which point the search has to stop. But if you give consent, then they have the consent gives them the authority. But that's an important point, too, because here, IRS had that option. They could have asked Mr. Harper for this information. They could have, given him notice. They could have given him an opportunity to say no in this circumstance. They did none of that.
And so, as crypto wallet holders, and this is a kind of a pretty specific application, but as crypto wallet holders, is there anything that we can do to prevent this? I mean, it seems like this was just kind of arbitrary.
Yes, and that's the other kind of interesting angle to the story is, so for example, with Mr. Harper, he bought and sold Bitcoin using at least 3 Bitcoin exchanges, and these exchanges typically have very solid privacy agreements with the customers. So one way to start thinking about this is to look at those privacy agreements and see what kind of protections there are in place, because if the agreement allows the exchanges to give customers' information to IRS or any law enforcement officers, then that's the place where they could have obtained information on all of these people.
We're going to take a quick break. Stick with me through the break. We'll be back right after this.
It's talk radio that'll make you think, laugh, want to join in?
Certainly.
Join me, Joe Pags, today at 5 on Talk Radio for the rest of us, WTKI Talk.
Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Fred Holland Morning Show. This is Tom Rigsby sitting in for Fred as he finishes up his assignment this week. We'll see how that assignment has gone later today. Before the break, we were visiting with Dyanr, litigation counsel from New Civil Liberties Alliance. We're talking about this lawsuit that they have filed against the IRS for seizing data, accessing, demanding data from Coinbase and some of the cryptocurrency trading. So before the break, Audie, we were talking that I guess the IRS has made this demand to Coinbase, and as I read this, there's some John Doe type demands made here. What does that mean, and are there implications for us, just casual crypto traders?
Sure. So there's this important Fourth Amendment doctrine called the third-party doctrine that the U.S. Supreme Court has recently called into question. So the case there was Carpenter, in which the police officers were seizing GPS cell site information. So essentially the issue is this information is owned by a person, but it's in the possession of a second person, and the law enforcement officers are obtaining this information from that third party. And is that constitutional? And the court in the Carpenter case said that the third-party doctrine is on thin ice. So that's essentially the issue here, because the information that the IRS claims it has was probably obtained from one of these crypto exchanges, not from the persons who own that information. And that's the issue that we are tackling with this case.
Yeah, and kind of back to our example of being pulled over while you're driving, your client, Mr. Harper, didn't have the opportunity to consent or decline the IRS having access to that data. That's really why we're taking issue with it, right?
Yes, and of the 3 exchanges that he has been in agreement with, one of those, Uphold, has already disclosed that they did not disclose his information to IRS. So recently, 2 weeks ago, we amended the complaint giving that additional information to the court, that one of these 3 exchanges has now said that they have not disclosed this information. So they have been protecting the customers' information. But the other 2 exchanges have not confirmed or denied. And we'll have to see how those exchanges or how IRS answers those allegations that we have.
Now, before the break, you mentioned really that we need to pay attention to the terms of use and the privacy agreements that we are making with these websites. In this case, almost a financial institution, almost. But these terms of service and privacy agreements, they matter, don't they?
They absolutely do, and some agreements are better than others. So it's important to see what the terms and conditions of these agreements are. And thankfully for people who are interested in owning Bitcoin wallets. There are many companies out there, and the agreements and the strength of the privacy protections vary from company to company, and it's important to check that before committing to a specific Bitcoin exchange.
Yeah, and I think an important point to make here is that your case is not related to him not paying taxes or doing things that he shouldn't have done. I mean, your assertion is that he's paid all of his taxes, he's done everything legally. There is no reason for them to go on this kind of fishing expedition. I think the thing, as I read this story, the thing that bothers me the most is just that there's this expectation on the part of this federal agency that they can just go and poke around and look for people that are doing things wrong.
That's exactly right. And the way that the IRS is operating is they are proceeding as if there is an IRS exception to the Constitution. And we are here to say that there isn't.
Yeah, and I know that it just happened that I guess the computer was listening to our conversation. We got the IRS is the greatest debt collector on the planet commercial right before you came back on. But I think that most people that have interactions with the IRS are really not happy with those interactions. I mean that it's a stressful time, right? To get a letter from the IRS is tough because they've got all the weight of the government behind them, and here we are, just Joe taxpayer trying to do our thing. So that it can be scary to get those letters for sure.
It is scary indeed, and in situations like this where the person who receives the letter has done nothing wrong, right, it's scarier still. Right.
So this is Audie Dyanr. We're visiting with litigation counsel from the New Civil Liberties Alliance. Audie, where can people find out more about the New Civil Liberties Alliance, the work that you're doing, and more about this case?
You could go to nclalegal.org. Again, it's nclalegal.org. And we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, civil rights organization. And our litigation is at no cost to the client. That's awesome. Thanks so much for visiting with us today. I really appreciate it. And do keep us up to date on what's going on with this case. We will. Thanks for having me, Tom.